Hi guys, I'm EVM and welcome back to the channel. Now today I want to talk about something which crops up in the EV media from time to time and usually has the word breakthrough in the title, and that is wireless or inductive charging of electric vehicles. Now the technology itself I have no problem with. It's been around for many years, mobile phones for example, and it's quite a cool idea. I do quite like it for that. But unfortunately for me, it's not and never will be a viable solution for any form of mass rollout to aid people in getting or owning an electric vehicle. As I said, the technology itself is pretty sound really, and it will get better, more efficient, but I just can't see it happening. It's going to be maybe a gimmick at best, a niche market. It will work for drones in an Amazon warehouse, for example, to dock themselves, but in terms of actual passenger cars, using them on the road, in car parks, at home, places like that, it's just not viable for me. Now I'm going to split this video into two separate categories because there are two types of charging when it comes to EV ownership. There's what I would call onward charging. So if you're doing a long journey, let's say I can do 200 miles on a full charge and I'm doing a 500-mile journey, I will have to stop at least twice to get to my destination. So I want to stop quickly and efficiently so I can carry on my journey. So that's all about speed and efficiency and getting to where you're going as quickly as possible. And then there's destination charging, which, as the name suggests, is where you charge at wherever it is you're driving to, whether that's a supermarket car park, cinema, your place of work, of course, or even your house. So I'm going to take these two scenarios and look at them and see why, for me, wireless charging won't work. So let's look at the onward journeys. What does wireless give you that would save me time or money or aid the rollout of electric vehicles? Well, basically, the idea isn't a new one, and it came out, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago when EVs were new and very short range. And it basically meant that you were going to put one of these, a wireless charging pad, clearly a much bigger one, this is for a phone, you're going to have a lot of these along at least one lane of every motorway in the country. The idea being is that you would drive along the motorway and the car would be able to charge by being on top of the wireless charger. And you would have a succession of these all along the road. So as far as the car's concerned, you're always charging along the entire motorway network. Wherever you go, there's always going to be a wireless charging pad underneath the car. You don't have to fill the battery up. You just need to trickle charge, put enough back in that the car's using to maintain the motorway speed. So technically, this sounds like a cracking idea. In theory, if you had a motorway loop, you could carry on driving forever. You wouldn't need to stop. So why do I think it won't work? Well, two main reasons really. One, it's kind of assuming, and the idea is based on technology of yesterday or maybe today, short range electric vehicles. In 5, 10, 15, 20 years time, all electric vehicles will have what we would call today a long range. So if you are doing a 500-mile journey, you may have to charge at most once in the future because all EVs will have a range which will probably match that of a petrol car, even the cheapest ones. Don't know whether it will be 5, 15 or 20 years, who knows, but it will get there. It's a case of when rather than if. So all of a sudden, if the country's fleet of EVs can do 3, 4, 500 miles on a single charge, it gets to the stage where it's not the car that needs to stop, it's the person, it's the driver that needs to pull off, because the car could probably carry on for longer than the driver should realistically be driving for. To put it into context, the centre of London to the centre of Edinburgh is about 400 miles. If you're going to drive from there to there with no traffic, I mean, I've looked on Google Maps at the moment on a Sunday and during lockdown when there's very little traffic, and it reckons it's about 7 hours to do that journey. Now we've all done that. I've done 7 hours without stopping before, but it is kind of stupid, and that's with no traffic. If I'm going to do a 400-mile journey, certainly if you've got a kid in the car or two, you're going to be stopping at least once to go to the toilet, driver fatigue, get something to eat. So although some people will want to do that journey without stopping, and wireless charging would help them do that, the vast majority of people would stop on a trip of that length at least once. Truck drivers, I believe it's every 4 hours, have to stop by law. and that's for safety reasons. So if you're driving 8 hours without stopping at all, that's very dangerous and kind of stupid. So the need for this wireless charging network along the motorway to enable cars to do long ranges is less of an issue, because most of them will be doing whatever the driver wants them to do in a single charge anyway. But that doesn't mean it won't help some people. No doubt there will be people in the comments right now saying, I'm a travelling salesman, I do 5 million miles a day, and I want to be able to charge my car very quickly in 2 seconds time, because that's what I do with a petrol car. I never stop, ever, I just keep driving. Well, yeah, all right, a wireless charging network may work for you, but for me, it will never happen, partly for the reason I just suggested, but mainly for this one, the cost. What do you think the cost would be to put a wireless charging system in just one lane on both sides, remember, so that's 2 lanes of over 2,000 miles of the strategic road network? And that's assuming we ignore the main A roads that you would probably need to do as well. If you think HS2 is expensive, rolling this sort of thing out along every single motorway in the country, even the remote ones, we're talking a colossal amount, billions upon billions upon billions, all to help the person that does a ridiculous amount of miles in a car. Today, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it kind of made sense. But the colossal cost of that, and considering it's a problem for most people that won't exist in 5 years or 15 or whenever, as I say, it just never will happen, will it? On the motorway network, it won't happen because it will be unneeded, unnecessary. Charging speeds, along with charging the range of a car, is getting substantially quicker as the years progress as well. 5 years ago, you'd probably charge at 50 kilowatts, Tesla aside. Today, you can charge at over 300 with, granted, just one car at the moment, but that's today's technology. In 20 years' time, the charging speed will be a lot quicker. Solid state batteries, for example, would enable that. So the need to be able to charge as you drive along would, well, for 99% of the people, it wouldn't exist. And then when you factor in the colossal cost of putting it in the motorway network, that won't happen, will it? It will not happen. If that high-speed rail 2 was very cheap to install, I don't think anybody would argue against it. Apart from, ploughing through the countryside, it's a good thing, it's a great benefit. And if it was costing a few hundred million as opposed to billions, people would be all for it. But the cost to benefit ratio isn't there, is it? And that's the same with the wireless charging on the Onward journey. The cost to benefit ratio is just miles apart, and for me, that is why it will never happen. So what about destination charging? Will wireless charging or inductive charging work in that circumstance? Well, unfortunately, I'm going to have to subcategorize this as well, because there are kind of 3 different things or scenarios to look at really that I need to figure out whether or not it would work for them. There's people who can charge at home, like myself. I have a driveway, I have a garage. People who can't charge at home, so you have to rely on parking on the street. Will wireless charging work for them, for example? And then there's car parks. Work car parks, supermarket car parks, things like that. Will wireless charging work in that scenario? So let me start to look at the scenario I'm in right now. Will it work, or will people get wireless charging if they can charge at home already? For me, personally, it's like a smart device that's not that useful. Some people will go for it, probably me, just because it's quite cool or geeky. I would like a smart kettle, for example, but I couldn't really justify it. I mean, let's face it, if I had wireless charging in this garage right now with this car, I would pull the car in, get out, and it would start charging. Simple. But as it stands now, as I live in the Stone Age and I have to physically plug my car in, I'd have to get out of the car, pick the cable up, and do this. So with wireless charging, I wouldn't have to do that. I would save literally 10 seconds of my time by not having a cable and using a Wi-Fi point. Not Wi-Fi, wireless, inductive charging. So you get my point. It's kind of nice to have, but it's gimmicky, isn't it? It's not needed because all I'm doing is saving myself doing that, from plugging a cable in. And there is one significant disadvantage to wireless rather than this. If I want to charge under a wireless system, I could do that quite easily in my garage. I will get the mat put here. But what if I wanted to park my car on the driveway there? I would have to get another wireless charge point installed. Or what if I wanted to put it on that side of the drive over there? again, I'd have to get a third wireless charging system installed. Whereas with the cable, which is why I got it installed here next to the garage door, I can plug it in whether it's in the garage, whether it's there on the drive, there on the drive. So a wireless charging system is far less flexible, and for me it would probably get annoying, just like it never really worked in the home with a mobile phone. You get my point? It would be annoying, whereas a cable can reach everywhere. A wireless charging point has to be installed anywhere you want that car to charge. It needs to be a dedicated parking spot pretty much for it to work. So in scenario 1, people who can charge at home such as myself, it's a gimmick. It's a nice to have, it's certainly not a need, and I don't think it'd be of any real benefit other than that geekiness to anybody to be able to wirelessly charge their vehicle. It's saving you 10, maybe 15 seconds of time, so that's not a big thing, and ultimately it's far less flexible. So what about people who have to park on the road? Would wireless charging make sense for them? Because I think that's mainly what people think it would solve the problem of. You can't get a cable from your house to the road, so if wireless charging was built into the road, because that's the idea, put wireless charging in residential streets, people can park on the road with no cable stretching across the pavement, any of that. It sounds like a great idea. But again, in reality, not for me. There's too many hurdles to jump over, too many things that need to be solved for that to work. Look at the car behind me, for example. That is parked part on the pavement, part on the road. How would that work if you had a charging system that was embedded into the road? Most people have to park like this because if you park fully on the road, no one can get past, at least nothing big. You're half on the pavement, half on the road. The wireless charging system is here. It wouldn't work, would it? That's a technological question, but ultimately a significant hurdle that needs to be answered. And it's not just this. This is a 13-year-old road, something like that. What about all the other roads? In fact, let me take a walk down there and I'll show you exactly what I mean. This is a major A road going through my village, and look, there are cars and houses lining this main A road. They have to park half on the pavement because if they park fully on the road, there wouldn't be enough room for cars to get past, especially if you meet something oncoming. So how would that work? How would you get a wireless charging system for them? By forcing them to park on the road, it would make it, well, the traffic flow would grind to a halt. That would not work. So the only thing they could do is not park there. Obviously the solution is to get people out of cars, but in terms of enabling charging for wireless electric vehicles, this wouldn't work. And I've just walked around the corner from my street. There are more examples of this. Literally the next road down. It could maybe work, but for a lot of people it wouldn't. Again, not suitable. How about this street up here? How would it work in a situation like this? And this is literally just a few streets down from me. Half of the cars here are parked where they can get space. Most roads in the UK are not designed with cars in mind. They never were. There's too many old roads and things like that that make it impossible. This is just one tiny village, and half of the streets around me, probably more than half, would not work in a wireless charging environment. Now, these problems aren't insurmountable, although some of them may be, but it does highlight my point that installing a wireless charging system is fine if you live in SimCity world, but not in the real world. Half of the streets, most of the streets in the UK are not suitable for something where you have to specifically mark out a parking bay. There's not enough space. People stick cars where they can get them. You're not meant to park half on the pavement, half on the road, but it's the only solution for a lot of us. So for me, there are many hurdles, some technological, some logistical, which may or may not be easily overcome, but they are questions that need to be answered if you were going to put wireless charging on a residential street, any residential street. For me, that's a big reason. But the biggest one, the one that ultimately will mean this is never going to happen, is again, it's down to cost. The cost to benefit ratio. Even if everything I just mentioned didn't exist, we did live in the world of a computer game where you can just plonk things down like that. How much do you think it would cost to put a wireless charging infrastructure on just half or even a third of all residential streets in this country? It would make the motorway rollout look cheap. We're talking billions upon billions again, tens of billions, maybe even hundreds. I mean, let's face it, the UK isn't great with roadworks, is it? We have to repair a gas main and that will take a week. Can you imagine? Every single street would need someone to plan where to put the points, plan the parking bays, and then do all the roadworks, dig up pretty much all the residential streets that needed the wireless charging. That would take decades under UK roadworks. And then it comes back to need. As I said with the motorway example, ranges of electric vehicles is significantly more as time goes past, to the point where they will match petrol engine cars. And charging speeds, again, are getting faster and faster, to the point where eventually I genuinely believe that an electric vehicle will be able to charge as quick as a petrol pump can put petrol in a car. We might be 20 years off that, we might have to wait until something like solid state batteries becomes a reality, but it will get there. I am absolutely certain of that. Once we get to that stage of being able to refuel a car in 5 minutes-ish, then you will not need to charge at home. Technology, again, will solve this problem. Certainly, it wouldn't be worth spending tens of billions or more putting a wireless charging system in that eventually won't be needed. It will require a phenomenal amount of money to maintain such a system, not just to install it. Give that as an option to the taxpayer, to a politician, to a council. It's not going to happen, is it? Again, the cost to benefit ratio, considering that eventually technology will solve the problem of how you charge if you can't charge at home. It won't happen. It's not economically viable once again. I would love it to exist. Again, in the perfect world, if money was infinite, well, it obviously isn't, but if it was, I would absolutely be in favour of this. Remember, I'm saying it won't happen for realistic reasons, not I don't want it to happen. Now we get to the final scenario. Would a wireless charging system work in a car park? Whether it's a supermarket, a workplace, a cinema, wherever. Because one issue that I've mentioned here is that electric vehicles would need to charge in a proper designated bay for them to know where the wireless pad is and for it to work properly. So a car park surely is the ideal solution because they're already marked out bays. That would work, wouldn't it? This is a very badly drawn car park. There are 12 spaces, and let's imagine this is for your business and you're going to use your money to give your customers charging options for their electric vehicles. But do you choose wireless charging in a car park or physical posts? Which would be easier? Well, for a customer, I guess wireless charging would be easy, assuming of course their car supported it, because then they just have to park in the spot and they're done, they walk away. Whereas with the physical post, they're going to have to get out and plug it in. With a wireless charging system, you'd need to install one there, one there, one there, one there, one there. You get my point. You would need 12 individual installations of inductive charging systems. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But what about if you went for physical posts? Would that change anything? This is the flexibility argument again. If I was to put physical posts in, I would put one there, and one there. Just 3 installations needed to cover 12 parking bays. Because what would happen is someone would park there and he could use his lead that way. Or he could park there and use the lead that way. And of course you can get quad charging posts, so 4 people can use it at any one time. But whichever spot you go in, your lead will easily reach the corner of the parking bay, and therefore you can charge. So the car park owner only has to put in 3 devices that are far easier and cheaper to maintain as well to cover a car park rather than 12 individual wireless ones. So I can see some car parks, maybe a golf club with very expensive cars parking in them, they may do that sort of wireless charging system. But in reality, for me, it just doesn't work. For one, you're going to have to dig up existing car parks for it to make sense. But these, the physical charging posts, easier to maintain, easier to replace, and easier to upgrade if the standards ever change. That's something I've not touched on yet. What if the wireless charging standard ever changed across the industry? Would you be redigging up all the roads again to upgrade them all? Like Bluetooth or something like that? That would be a bit of a costly disaster. It may never happen, I don't know. But it does lead me to another point really. What about a charging standard? In the UK right now, I can buy a Nissan Leaf with a CHAdeMO charging socket on it, or a myriad of other cars with CCS on it, some AC only. So what I'm saying is, they haven't agreed a standard for a physical cable. It's taken, a decade or more, and we'll still not get there. The entire industry, at least in somewhere like Europe, would have to agree on a wireless charging standard. Again, that would take ages because every single manufacturer in the world that sold a car in this country would have to use the same standard. It's not impossible, it could happen, but it's yet another hurdle to get over. So to recap, basically what I'm saying is, although I like this sort of technology, I love technology, there's someone at my work who has a smart rice cooker. And after I heard that, I wanted one, even though it's utterly useless for 99.9% of the time. It does though, when it comes to wireless charging, come down to one thing. Money. That's a pound sign, by the way, if you're wondering. But it's all about the economy of it for me. This is why it doesn't work. It will not be viable. Again, I'm not saying I don't want it to happen. It'd be great if it did, but for the many, many reasons I've suggested in the various scenarios in this video, I just don't see it ever occurring, in the UK especially, but probably in any country. It would be far more efficient and probably quicker to install charging hubs, for example, that can charge 50 cars at any one time, like a petrol station almost, than it would do to line the streets with a wireless charging system that needs to be maintained, that needs to be dug up and put into the road, assuming of course there's nothing in the road already that would stop that from happening. The parking thing that I mentioned in terms of where people put their cars would have to be resolved. There's too many questions and not enough answers, and I don't think those answers will ever turn up. What do you think? That's what the comments are for. Please do let's create a discussion about this, because I'd be interested to know if anybody's actually used one. I know there are a few systems around at the moment that you can put in certain cars. I'm not sure if some Teslas had adapters for that sort of thing. But ultimately, do you think it'd work? Would you get one in your garage or driveway just because you could? Or would it all come down to cost? Right, again, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Please do subscribe. It really makes a big difference to small channels such as this. And I'll see you soon.